I think when I think about AmeriCorps, I always think about the fact that it brings additional capacity to any organization or group that it serves. I mean, again, I'll just recap that like NCCC is like direct short-term support and service. Vista is volunteer capacity building, so something grant making and things like that. And then State and National is often direct support. And so if you
Yeah.
look at all three of those, they end up being force multipliers to any organization they work with. One thing I want to say about Peace Corps is it is the best Kickstarter to a federal career, right? If you talk to the
Oh,
people who are principal officers at the embassy, most of them got their start with the Peace Corps. They did Peace Corps and then they just stayed. They went to
get out.
USCB, they went to Peace Corps itself. They worked for the Inter-America Foundation or any of these international organizations that are run through the federal government. But their Peace Corps experience prepared them for next steps in federal career.
Okay, folks, we are back with another AmeriCorps Connections podcast. We are still in our series of dual service members. Now, we have a little bit of a tweak on this one because we have an AmeriCorps member who served as an AmeriCorps member and Teach for America, but also now serves as the director of a country for Peace Corps. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with Antonio, who, by the way, is a returning guest. And if you want to hear his full arc of service, go back to episode 37, where Anthony and I connected on his journey through Teach for America at placed in a school in Newark. And we like to, in that conversation, you'll hear, if you put your name on the list for Newark, you're probably going to be placed there. Which is great stuff. So before we get started, I want to say maybe two or three things. Number one, thank you so much for Sharon Tewksbury Bloom and from the Do Good Be Good team for helping me uh, edit and promote this podcast. And number two, if you are watching or listening to this on YouTube, if you could hit subscribe, it actually makes a difference. I'm learning that if we have more subscribers, then the content's going to come up more in your feed. And we want folks, especially now, to know about all of these stories of national service. We want to share these stories. We want all of the folks who support and fund AmeriCorps to understand that not only are we pouring into our communities, we're pouring into people who go on to careers who are taxed and their income goes back into our community. And we want this all to continue. So anyways, please, if you're watching this or listening to this on YouTube, subscribe and continue to follow for more
Vicky, can I
content.
add to that?
Yeah,
Like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you do
like
it.
share, and subscribe. Thank you so much. Well, with that, let's just jump into it. So, Antonio, you're back for another interview. Thank you so much for trusting me to come back. It's always good when a guest is like, yeah, I'll do it again.
Of course, it was such a great experience the first time. So many people told me what a great interview it was, so I had to do it again.
I love it. So, today we're going to be talking about your experience with AmeriCorps, but for folks that, I mean, your experience with Peace Corps, but for folks that didn't go back to episode 37 and didn't listen, can you do a quick, like, how you found AmeriCorps? Like, yeah, because I'm going to just look at your resume really quick. I got to look at your LinkedIn
Good.
profile. Folks,
Good.
okay, folks, he has served the state of Colorado as deputy chief of staff for the lieutenant governor. He's also was executive director for Serve Colorado, which is the state service commission in Colorado. He was the deputy regional director for programs for NCCC, which is the National Civilian Community Corps.
Got it.
Yes. And now he is a country director for Mexico for the Peace Corps. So your journey is so steeped in service. And you actually served as an AmeriCorps member as Teach for America. So let's just start there just for a snippet, and then we'll go into all the stuff Peace Corps.
Sure, I'm also an Aquarius. I also like pina coladas and taking walks in the rain. Uh, so yeah, no, I did teach for America back in 2006. I did it after graduating from Colby College in Waterville, Maine. I did TFA, and I've told this story in episode 37, so I won't retell it. But essentially, I saw my seventh grade social studies teacher in a video while I was at a recruiting event eating dinner because I forgot to eat dinner that night. And I thought the universe was sending me a sign. And so I applied to TFA when it was at its height in terms of recruiting stats. I think they only let in 4% of applicants. But I was lucky enough to get it, and I went to Newark, New Jersey. After my time with TFA, I thought my time at AmeriCorps was done, essentially. I went on to work at a nonprofit, then applied to law school into the Fulbright program, got both, did Fulbright, deferred law school entrance till 2011. Graduated with a degree in international law because I thought I was going to work for the UN or for some kind of extraordinary chambers doing like human rights abuse stuff. Um, but instead ended up working for the Hickenlooper campaign, where I then became deputy chief of staff to the lieutenant governor after that election. And then got promoted to be the head of Serve Colorado, the Governor's Commission on Community Service, which was the state program for AmeriCorps, and then went from the state side to the federal side, and now I'm here at Peace Corps. But yeah, AmeriCorps, I thought I was done with it back in 2000s, but I wasn't, and it's followed me all throughout my career, working in national service and supporting national service, supporting other members that have experiences like the one I had. It's been incredibly fulfilling, and I thought I should use my international skills, and here I am at Peace Corps in Mexico as the sixth country director and the first Latino country director.
Cheers to that.
Victory. Victory.
And for folks, like he's in Mexico right now. We are recording internationally. This is the second time that, no, the third time that the AmeriCorps Connections podcast has recorded internationally. We were in Germany, I think, Craig Worrell was in like Asia or something for some reunion that we did last year. So third international recording. So one of the things I wanted to like ask you about, you did state and national, you did NCCC, and then you did your own TFA. Could you capsulate like what is a similar, and I don't even know if it's possible, but is there like a similar sort of vibe to all those different service opportunities? Like if
Yeah.
you were to like zoom out and just be like, this is what I see. Could you do that between the three different ones?
Yeah, I think when I think about AmeriCorps, I always think about the fact that it brings additional capacity to any organization or group that it serves. So, like when I did Teacher
Mhm.
America, the idea was there's not enough teachers in our schools. We need teachers. Let's pull folks right from undergrad who have this, you know, intense desire to support and to give back to communities. And let's train them while they, because I didn't go to school for teaching, right? And I
Right.
think the idea was that you learn on the job. And there are all kinds of valid criticisms about that and about what makes sense. But what I will say is everyone who was in my cohort had a desire to help and had a desire to support kids, right? I was one of three men in my school, in my elementary school. So with the state and national program, we had programs in our portfolio like City Year. And when you think about your typical City Year member, you have folks who are go-getters who are supporting in all kinds of different ways in classrooms. We had this program called Hippie Corps, or it's like, I'm trying to remember what Hippie Corps stands for. It's like uh, Parents of Prenatal Youth is the PPY, and I'm forgetting what the HI stands for, but
Yeah, yeah.
it was a health program, and it's actually the oldest program in our portfolio at the time, that was dedicated to supporting new parents, right, and providing positive health outcomes to all children. But again, then you go to NCCC and you have these teams, these cohorts of folks who are being deployed, in my case, in 9-state region, in things like environmental issues or infrastructure issues or urban and rural development issues. And so, whether it was Oklahoma, Texas, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, they would just say, okay, we're going there and we'll be deployed for anywhere between um, one, actually it was like 3 to 6 months
Hmm.
on the deployment. But yeah, it was something that I think was really powerful. And again, everyone had a desire to help both the organizations they worked with, but also just the country at large. And so I think that's really powerful. That's the kind of tie that binds us all. So yeah,
Yeah, and I think about like where we are as a country, and we're not going to speak election in this thing, but because I have
I
all kinds
cannot,
of different feelings and things
and I
about that.
cannot legally.
Yeah, we're not legally going to do it anyways. But
Yeah.
I will say, I mean, I don't know if you can or can't answer this question, but like the landscape of the United States without AmeriCorps would look different
Mm,
based
agreed.
off of like your assessment. And I think that I agree that it's like folks getting in there doing like working so hard and doing what they can for 3 to 12 months and then are extracted and I think that the landscape would just be different in a lot of organizations where I've seen where AmeriCorps members have gone in there, started programs, found resources, created partnerships, which has led to X, Y, and Z down the road. So, I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, and if we need to move on, we can. But
Oh
like,
no,
would you say the landscape would be a little bit different if we didn't have this
yeah, I mean, again, I'll just
program?
recap that like NCCC is like direct short-term support and service. Vista is volunteer capacity building, so something grant making and things like that. And then State and National is often direct support. And so if you
Yeah.
look at all three of those, they end up being force multipliers to any organization they work with. And again, that's religious groups, that's government, local government, nonprofits. I mean, just a wide range of who AmeriCorps works with. It would impact a huge portion of the country if there was no AmeriCorps moving forward.
Yeah, agree with that. The last thing I'll just kind of say about that too is that when you look at the disasters, environmental and others that have happened around the country, first folks are there, FEMA Corps and Triple C, and sometimes I think it's what is it, SP something?
SBP, St. Bernard Project, but I just go by SBP.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That are there. They are the ones that are mucking and gutting. They are the ones that are doing the thing. And without those bodies or those people, like, what are
Yeah,
you gonna
Red
do?
Cross also there. There's a group Catholic Charities. I mean, there's just a group of folks who, immediately something happens and FEMA will coordinate everyone and they'll be there immediately. So
Yeah,
yeah, agreed.
yeah. Okay, so let's just take a left turn here.
Okay.
Thank you for that. I was like, well, and the reason I asked you is because of your 50,000 foot view, right? You've been in state government, like outside of national service, but then you've been in the commission, you've been in NCCC, and now you're in Peace Corps. And so that view matters. Like I thought I would like had this great view, but now I'm like, oh, I'm just in a hot air balloon where Antonio is in a SpaceX rocket going across the planet
I
going, let me take
don't
a
know
look at
about
this.
that.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna so folks that if you want to know more about his Teach for America, go to episode 37. It was a wonderful interview. I think we talked for like an hour and a half. I don't even know. But how did you what made you decide to move from what you were doing into this role in Peace Corps? And maybe I'm projecting, but I feel like these are coveted roles and they're also like competitive and really important. And it's not just like I fill out a resume and somebody's like, oh, he seems to have it's like you probably have to have clearance, you have to have all like clearance in major countries. And again, Peace Corps is not my wheelhouse. So you tell me when you're like, can't talk about it, Nikki. Um, but what made you decide, like, and you said you wanted to take your international experience and do something with that. Um, yeah, so how did you find yourself here?
Yeah, thank you for asking. You know, I knew it was time for me because I felt like at NCCC, a lot of the ideas that I had were coming together. So we had a lot of breaking down silos. For
Mm-hmm.
example, we did an executive directors meeting at the NCCC Southwest Region campus where several of the EDs from our region came out, but we also brought out the Office of Regional um, Operations, ORO, the Mountain Office came out. Um, and we were talking about here are the things we're all doing. Here's some shared goals that we can push towards. Um, I got an MOU signed with Arkansas State Parks right before I left. So it just felt like, okay, I am firing on all cylinders here, but I'm worried I'm not growing anymore. And I really pushed myself
Mm.
to grow. And I thought, okay, this job is hard in a domestic context. Can you imagine taking those same members that you have, having to get them to get, background checks, health checks, make sure that they're physically fit to be in a foreign country, and then deploying them to states all around Mexico is huge. I serve currently 5 states. We're expanding to 7 this fall. But there are, so many more states that we could be serving. Part of the challenge why we don't serve more is because of security issues that, we just have to um, deal with that reality. But yeah, it's a different challenge. And I've gained some skills in this role in the 7 months that I've been here that I don't think I would have gained working at NCCC in the role that I was in. Um, so yeah, I think for me it was time to continue growing. Like you said, these are coveted positions. They're difficult to attain. You do have to get certain levels of clearance, and you do have to get certain levels of background check done. Funny story, just because I think it's really funny. Um, I was doing my background check, and the person who's doing the check was asking me like, my parents are Dominican American. They're Dominican citizens who then became naturalized in the U.S., but they never gave up their Dominican citizenship, and there was a question as to why. So I was like, let me call them and find out. And my mom was like, who's asking? And I was like, all right, mom, love you. Bye, 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 bye. Like, did not want to just tank this thing because my mom got sassy that day. Love my mom, and
You're like
at the moment for that.
breaking up. Can't
Yeah,
hear you. Sorry. Call you
sorry,
right back.
mom. Bye, bye, bye. Valid question, completely valid question, especially in like a background check. But yeah, it is a privilege to have this role. It is not a right. It is, something I understand the weight and the magnitude of the position. Um, Proud to say we're celebrating our 20th anniversary at Peace Corps in Mexico, and we just swore in Peace Corps Mexico Class 24, so 34 new volunteers that have gone out to their site. I was super thankful that I got to invite Gaddy Vasquez. Gaddy Vasquez was the director of the Peace Corps back in 2004 when Peace Corps Mexico was made.
Wow.
Gaddy Vasquez was the first Mexican American Peace Corps global director. And this was his baby. This was his dream, right? He saw the countries we were serving. He's like, why not Mexico? And it was so nice to be able to sit with him and just hear the stories of how that bilateral partnership came through. And for him to just beam with pride at the fact that 20 years later, this program is still going strong. And to smile when he saw that some of the original crew from 20 years ago still work at Peace Corps in Mexico today. Um, yeah, it was really powerful just to celebrate that.
So you said it was the 20 year
20
for
year.
Peace Corps Mexico.
Yep.
Yeah, because Peace Corps as a whole organization was in the 60s, right?
Yeah, so
Kennedy.
it's like a 60-year history, but 60
Yeah,
plus.
and so one of the things, so I'm like a I love open mindset, right? I love the idea of an open mindset. So something that stuck with me real fast that I just want to like double tap on or whatever is that you said I felt like I wanted to grow a little bit more. Like I was pushing myself and it was hard, but I wanted to push myself further. And I think that it's really easy for all of us, especially AmeriCorps alums who are so used to like pushing and like getting it done and getting out there and getting things. And then it's easy to get complacent and it's easy to just be like, I get a paycheck, things are good. I'm all set. What do you think, what do you think the influence is for you to make that decision where, you were making those connections with NCCC, but to just say, you know what? I'm going to go outside my comfort zone and the position of your comfort zone, and outside your comfort zone, that's the growth, right?
Mhm.
And then, and I think it was um oh shoot. Um Hurricane Katrina, Rita, it's funny. I interviewed disaster relief and her name's Rita. And then the other person that works there is Katrina. And I'm like, which hurricane was it? I interviewed Rita and she said she had to keep pushing her comfort zones further and further and further. So what was it that you felt like in you made you push your comfort zone to go to leap to Peace Corps?
Yeah, first I just want to say hi to Rita Pratt and Katrina and the entire DSU. Those folks were
Yes.
fantastic. I actually knew Rita when she was with the South Carolina Commission. And so we go way back there, and she's crushing it at NCCC. So yeah, just hi Rita. Nice to see you. I'll say for me again, and maybe I'm answering it the wrong way, and I apologize, but um, if you just look at my resume, it looks like I did all these things and there was no failure. And I think it's really
Mm,
important to cultivate a failure resume, right?
love
A
it.
resume of the things that you've attempted to do that you haven't done, but that at least you tried, right? So yes, I am country director of Peace Corps in Mexico. What you don't see on my resume is I applied to be a regional administrator for Vista. Never got it, right? Got interviewed several times, but never made that final jump. And so I think it's really important to keep trying to do things and to be flexible, right? So, okay, couldn't be the regional administrator for Vista. That doesn't mean I stop, right? That doesn't mean I stop pushing. Where else does my service experience maybe make sense? Okay, Peace Corps, it makes sense there, right? And so, yeah, I think if you look at all the things I haven't achieved, I would argue they're equally impressive as the things I have achieved. But when you tell the narrative of here are all the things I've achieved, it looks like a straight line. But really, it's all over the place with a bunch of failures that I'm really proud of because it shows that I've tried to do other things. And so I would just encourage everyone to be wildly ambitious, even if you fail, because in that failure, you learn a lot.
You are speaking my language. I swear I have to do a spin-off of this podcast of just mindfulness and because it's so true. And the thing is like the stoic philosophy of letting go, maybe it's the Buddhist, I don't know, of letting go of the outcome, right? Like and really just being like, this is this is what I want to feel and how I get there. I don't know how I'm going to get there, right? Like, I don't know how I'm going to get there. And it may show up tomorrow. It may show up in 3 months. It may show up in a different way. I listened to something recently where they said the time of vision boards and like writing out your goals is kind of waning. And it's more about like, how do you want to show up? What do you want your energy to be like? And then the universe kind of
Yeah.
matches to that and gives you the ability to serve in that way. And that's what I'm hearing through your story where you were like, these are the things I wanted to do. I had no and this is a whole other thing. Sorry, I'm going to go a little philosophical here.
Good.
We have no idea actually what our future has in store for us. You didn't know that when you were applying for the regional Vista and the other things that in the future actually there was a timeline already set for you to be this country director and that's where you needed to be. And you said the first Latino from Mexico.
Country director for Mexico. Yeah, the previous country directors, none of them were Latino.
So, so that's just wild in and of itself because it just shows that like of course we need somebody in that position that can represent and can show up and
Yeah.
be there in so many ways. So thank you so much for reflecting on that.
So you mentioned philosophy, and I'm just going to mention religion for a second. I'm of the Catholic faith. My mom is incredibly religious, my dad less so. But I'll say that one thing she taught me very early on was like prayer is not meant to be a substitute for action. You can do both, right? And so like praying is important, but acting is equally important. And so that's how I see it often, right? We're like we're aspiring for good things and great things, but then we also need to act behind that. It can't just be the aspiration because though
Right.
nothing will.
Yeah, 100%. And that's that whole thing of like I was saying something. I'm in a leadership program in Maryland, and
Congrats. Yeah, I
we're like
saw.
Yeah, and we were like on the bus like for 2 days, and I said to somebody, I said, I give it up and I give it to God because I have no idea where we're going. I don't care. Just feed me and make sure I have water. I'm like, whatever. You just kind of like let it go, but you can't
Right.
not show up. Okay, so let's roll into like what you're doing with Peace Corps right now and what does it mean? Like, I'm a country, folks, country,
Oh,
country director
oh.
of a Peace Corps program where you have people that, first of all, how many people do you place in Mexico right now?
Think we're currently at about 90 volunteers. That includes virtual service pilot participants, the Peace Corps Response Program, and our traditional Peace Corps program.
Okay, so you're responsible, just so people can like orient themselves. Antonio and his team are responsible for 20 souls that are over in Mexico or here serving virtually through the Peace Corps program. So, what does that mean? What does a director do?
Yeah. So I think of it as very similar to what I did at ServCom Executive Director. So I oversee a budget, I oversee a staff. My staff is about 28 folks. Um, but the staff that you oversee is different, right? So at Serve Colorado, it was program officers and grant officers. We had some training officers. But here, as a country director, I oversee safety and security specialists. I oversee doctors who provide the medical care to our volunteers. I oversee the programmatic aspect as well, and the fiscal and admin aspect of things as well. And then I have QAS, or a quality assurance specialist. It's someone who's sort of like internal quality control, which I think is really great. I think more folks should have this role, to make sure we're complying with all the different policies and procedures. But so that's the like programmatic element of it. Then I'm also like a basically government to government representative. So I work with basically alongside and a part of, but not a member of the embassy. So it's very confusing, but like Peace Corps is its own independent agency. It's not part of the State Department. Like I attend meetings with the ambassador on a weekly basis. I go down to his house occasionally and we discuss things. There is, it's a lot more international relations than I think some folks might be used to, depending on the country as well, right? I mean, in some countries, they don't have an embassy. The Peace Corps country director might be the top ranking US official who's in the country. So
Wow.
your role is way more formalized. Mission Mexico, the embassy, is, I think, the largest embassy in the world. I'm one of 41 principal officers. And so, like, it's a big embassy, as you might imagine. Peace Corps is a small element of a much larger machine. And so, yeah, I think for me, it's a lot of working with our two partners. We work with the Secretary of Education and the Secretary of Natural Resources, because those are our two programs here in Mexico. We also work with visas and immigration, right? When volunteers get placed, we have to let immigration know where they're going to be because their residency depends on where they are, things like that. So it is a little bit more complicated than when I was at Serve, but I think it's amazing. It's an amazing role. I still really love doing what I did at Serve, which is getting out into the field and seeing
Yeah.
volunteers in action, going to talk to communities because we can have these government to government relations, but I think it's the volunteers and how they impact the community that really matters. And just seeing the growth of the volunteer, right? Seeing folks who could barely speak Spanish when they came here now speak with a Mexican accent and know more words than I do is always really impactful. Or people who come and they already have that language ability, and it's more the cultural context of I thought I knew Mexico. Mexico's a lot larger than people think it is. And so just the impact there is, I think it's astounding.
So you mentioned language. The last two episodes with, well, actually all of the series with with the Peace Corps folks who served, that was one of the things they all focused on. Like the first part of the interview was like, so I had to learn Malawi, I had to learn this, I had to learn that. I think the interview was with John, and John, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting your name. Um or your last name. And he was like, I think Yeah, I think it was John. And he was like speaking about like health and stuff like that, and he used a word and he used it totally wrong. Like
Mm.
like really wrong. And he was like, "Yeah, you know what? I just had to like lean into it and be like, I'm a learner." So it's funny that you said that too about Peace Corps members learning the language. And something else that I shared on one of those interviews was that um my stepdad was from a little town in Sicily that was right next to my paternal great grandparents, and they
Mm.
spoke the same dialect of Sicilian. So I had like I know people who have gone through divorced families don't have great experiences, but I had a great experience. So my stepdad would come to Christmas dinners with my paternal family, and my paternal great grandparents would be there, and they would be so excited. The three of them would sit in the corner and just speak the Sicilian dialect. Like it was like the only time that they were able to, just other than amongst themselves, to talk to and out, somebody else that like understood the dialect. So language is huge, right? Um, language is like being seen, right?
Mhm.
Like, before we hit record on this, folks. I think one of us said "cómo estás," and I have very small Spanish, and he said something. I was like, I don't know what that means, and it was like something different that I didn't hear, and I was like, what does that mean? He's like, well, how do you feel? And then I was able to be like, oh, well, this is kind of where we're at. So I think your point about language is like super important for sure through the Peace Corps. And it sounds like it's like a small thing, but I don't know.
It's
It's
so important.
huge.
Yeah, I mean, think to the English language, right? And think of all the accents that you hear, right? And all the
Right.
variety of the ways that you speak English, right? And I think Spanish is the same way, right? Where I'm of Dominican background and I speak with a Dominican American accent that's heavily influenced by New York City. But when I'm here, I have to like speak very slowly because I know Dominicans speak very fast and that can be confusing. And I realize depending on where my volunteers learn Spanish, they're gonna have a completely different accent. And then depending on where they serve, their accent will also change, right? And so like really interesting to see just how the language component brings folks together. But what I will say is everyone is super graceful about folks learning the language, right? There's no one here. I feel like the only ones I've ever heard is like the French, where like if you speak French, well, they're gonna judge you for it, right? But
Fromage.
exactly. Most places that I've been to, people are actually really generous with folks who are attempting to learn their language and to speak it. It's a huge sign of respect, right? And so yeah, I think for me, what I had to learn was formal Spanish, right? It was
Mm.
work Spanish, professional Spanish, which is
Oh
different than
yeah.
just conversational Spanish or the Spanish that my parents grew up speaking to me, right? Um, and then there's also just country differences. So you're learning those country differences as well.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So I want to like two things. I think that what I want to ask is like, what are the biggest misconceptions about Peace Corps? One of my it's interesting. Again, I've only interviewed like four Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, five,
Sure.
maybe five. Um, and the theme seems to be like, don't think it's not you that can take advantage of this opportunity. If this opportunity shows itself, jump on it and do it. But from your perspective, and I know you've only been in this position, what, since the beginning of this year, is that right?
7 months. Yeah, 7 months.
Yeah. So I mean, you're whatever. Um, but from your perspective, what do you think the overall theme is of like a misconception where people are like, I couldn't do that. Like that's not for me.
Yeah, I think for me, what I've been trying to challenge while I've been here is the who can do Peace Corps and why do Peace,
Mm.
right? I think historically Peace Corps looks one way. Um, and I think, I actually got to meet the director of Peace Corps, the current director, Carol Spahn, in Denver when I was working for NCCC, um, at this session trying to talk about recruiting more Latinos into the Peace Corps and what are the challenges. Um, and I talked about the fact that with the Latino population, depending on the gender, and this is unfortunate but true, you may have to talk to the parents, right? You might have to say, hey,
Oh,
here's why I think it'd be good for your daughter to do Peace Corps. Um, And I think we're moving away from that, but that's still true in some Latino communities. So I think the Peace Corps really is for everyone. And the second part of the why, I think service is great. But one thing I want to say about Peace Corps is it is the best Kickstarter to a federal career, right? If you talk to the
Oh,
people who are principal officers at the embassy, most of them got their start with the Peace Corps. They did Peace Corps and then they just stayed. They went to
get out.
USAID, they went to, Peace Corps itself. They worked for the Inter-America Foundation or any of these international organizations that are run through the federal government. But their Peace Corps experience prepared them for next steps in federal career. It's interesting, my NCCC national director was Ken Goodson, and Ken had a career with the Peace Corps. And then he also did Millennium and a couple other federal agencies, but he would tell me about his experiences in Mongolia. And that sort of inspired me to think, okay, well, maybe Peace Corps for me as well. But I think folks think of the 2-year commitment with Peace Corps and they think, I can't afford to do that to my career because I'm actually going to be behind some of my colleagues who are going straight into the workforce. But I would disagree with that. I think it actually helps you skip the line a little bit. It helps you move forward into a career. Federal government work is, I think, good work. I think they pay well. I think there's good benefits. And so I've been telling folks, give me 2 years and I'll give you a career.
That's that's going to be the tagline for this pod. Give me 2 years, I'll give you a career. Wow, that's an amazing perspective. And I think that like you're probably, a director of a country is the person that can take that perspective because when you're in it and you're like, and then it led to this and it led to that and it led to that. It's not until you say, oh my gosh, like all of this like stacked up on top of each other. And now I am where I am. And that was part of my journey. So that makes a lot of sense. And that's so I just think it's really important when people are thinking about and I think we are in an exciting time where the only thing that limits people from doing something is their limiting belief. So if
Mhm.
somebody thinks that they can't serve as Peace Corps, then they're right, right? What is the quote? If you think you can, you're right. If you think you can't, you're right, right? Like whatever it is that you put in your brain and your message says like depending on what you want to do, give us 2 years and let's see what we can do. And you have all of the backup and all of the, you know, all of the not government agencies, but all the protocol to make sure that somebody can get through is it called a service year with Peace Corps?
No, because it's 2 years commitment. Um, Peace Corps is a 2-year program. The
So
Peace Corps
service
response,
commitment.
yeah, a service commitment, sure. Um, I'll say there's a Peace Corps response program, and I do want to pitch this as well, which is
Do it.
like your traditional Peace Corps experience, but it's anywhere between 6 months to a year, where you come into country, you do a 10-day orientation, and then you go out to site, and you have some folks doing amazing service. One of my volunteers for Peace Corps response is teaching American Sign Language to professors who are only teaching Mexican Sign Language to their deaf students, deaf and hard of hearing students, so that those deaf and hard of hearing students can have access to more international opportunities, right? ASL is a much more universally spoken language than the Mexican Sign Language is. So what a unique way to serve. And there are tons of different service opportunities like that one.
That's so cool that you brought that up because I didn't know about that. Like, peace, like in my brain, I'm like, people sign up for Peace Corps, they go to go to another country and they do their thing for 2 years, and they come back. But Peace Corps evolved to include all of these other programs. If somebody was interested in like looking at all the different programs, is there somewhere that they should go?
Yeah, go to the peacecorps.gov website. They definitely
Okay.
have, like I know with AmeriCorps, it's tough to say here's where you can find all AmeriCorps programs. There is a portal as well, but yeah, Peace Corps definitely has that, and each country has different due dates. One thing that's also unique as well, and it's a misconception, back when Peace Corps started, you applied to Peace Corps, and then we sent you wherever we felt like you were needed. So, okay, you're going to Nepal. You may have no interest in Nepal. That's changed. You now get to say what your preference is. So I know I'm very lucky to be in Mexico because folks want to come to Mexico. And I did my training for country director in the Dominican Republic, and that's a very popular post as well. Being Dominican, that does fill me with pride. But yeah, like there are posts that you can definitely say, I want to be there. I know we're also, I think, piloting 1 year
Mm.
programs, right? So it's like your typical Peace Corps, but only 1 year instead of two. And we're piloting that in the Africa region. So folks who are interested should be looking into those Africa region countries.
What are the age ranges for Peace Corps?
Oh, I think it's college degree to question mark, right? Well, yeah, there is health requirements. And I'll say that that's one thing that's different between AmeriCorps and Peace Corps is it takes longer for Peace Corps. The process
Mm.
is longer because we are doing a background check of you and we are doing a health check of you, right? Like we need to make sure that you are healthy enough to come out to post and to be at your site. You know, some folks get posted in very rural parts that
Yeah.
may not have access to the best medicine, and so we want to make sure you're safe. So yeah, so it does take, it can take 10 months to complete the Peace Corps process. Where I feel like with AmeriCorps, it's not that long. It's not a
Yeah.
10
So
process.
if folks are listening to this and they're like, I think I want to do Peace Corps, just go ahead and put your application in now because
It'll
it'll
take a
take a
while.
little bit of time.
Yeah.
Might as well. So I wanted to start to land the ship, but I wanted to ground it in some experience. I know you're relatively new in your position, but we talked about before we hit record that there were a few standout experiences that Peace Corps members have gone through or shared with you that I wanted to make sure that folks knew about, just because like when you ground it in a person's experience, I feel like people are like, oh, I see that. Can you share like one or two experiences of folks that you've experienced of where they've been like, this has made a big difference?
Yeah, so that I'll mention are they're both Latino folks, I can say that. One person was fourth generation Mexican, right? Removed from that a little bit, but her great grandparents were from Mexico, who did 2 years serving here in an indigenous community and did amazing service. I actually got to visit that person out at their site, where all I heard was positive things, and they were supporting our combating climate change and conservation program. Um, and after their service, they said, I'm not ready to leave Mexico yet, and I'm going to stay here, and I'm actually going to apply for my citizenship, for Mexican citizenship. I should say that you can't have Mexican citizenship and apply to Peace Corps in Mexico. That's actually a rule by the Mexican government, so it's
Okay.
great they're applying after the fact. But what an impactful service that they felt like, okay, I feel so connected now to this place. I'm gonna claim my citizenship. And then I spoke to another person whose parents were really concerned about them coming to Mexico. They felt like we left Mexico for a reason. It's not safe. We don't want you going back there. And that person said, I still feel a calling to serve here. And they came down and if you talk to them today, they'll say, I understand my parents' concerns. I have so much better understanding of what they did, their sacrifices for me, and I appreciate it. And it's interesting. Their parents, I think, actually came down for their swearing in ceremony.
Oh,
Yeah, and they were so proud that their child was in this program. And so I think it's led to mutual understanding, which I think is really great and such a unique experience to go through. So yeah, I know that several, I think there's maybe 10 of 34 were Mexican Americans from this newest class. So yeah, it's powerful stuff. But you don't have to be Mexican American to have this program change you. I have several volunteers who were done with their 2 year commitment and said, I'm going to stay for a third year. I don't think I'm done here.
oh
And
wow.
extend their service. Yeah. Some of them got placed in new sites, like we're opening up into the Yucatan Peninsula. So they're excited about that. Some folks stayed right with the school that they've always been with, and they want to continue doing good service. So really exciting for everyone.
That's so cool. And for folks that want to listen to other folks or other Peace Corps alum experiences, there's four other interviews. I wish I could do more. Like that's the thing with me. Like I did a recruitment series during the summer and I was doing four interviews a week and like it seems like, well, okay, but no, it takes like 5 hours to like interview, edit, get information out. But I'm so happy that I could share the experiences from the Peace Corps members who also served as AmeriCorps members, and it changed my perspective on like Peace Corps for sure, and a little bit better understanding. There was something that you said that I think was important, and I th I think what it had to do with that, like folks can go, they can have this experience and it can open them up to like opportunity, like not just opportunities, but like opening up themselves to things that they didn't know were there. Like the person that was like, well, I kind of feel an affinity to this country and I kind of want to be like tied to it. Like I love the United States, but I also want to be like be here too. Um, I don't know. I was gonna say how often do you see this, but
Well, so
it's a
it's
weird
interesting you asked
question.
that because I'm currently on the selection committee for Peace Corps does an event at the Kennedy Center where they talk about the stories of Peace Corps. And I think this year's is Tales of Transformation, right? And so I'm going to review countless entries from people, and you'd be surprised how many folks 30, 20, 30, 40 years later are talking about, I'm still in love with this country from my time as a Peace Corps volunteer.
Love
Like
that.
this country will always have a place in my heart. And their identity changes. Like you said, it does open up something within you once you've done this international service. And I'll say it's a bug. Once you catch it, it's hard to let go of it. Some folks say, you know what, I'm fine. I'll go back to my
Yeah.
community. Now having seen different things, I feel better for it. Some folks say, I don't need to go back. I want to go to other communities. I had two volunteers who extended, not in Mexico, but who were part of the reopening class of Peace Corps El Salvador and who are currently in El Salvador right now doing some amazing service. So they didn't want to go home, but they didn't want to stay here either. They wanted to keep traveling, keep learning. So yeah, I think there's many ways to do this. I think there are nothing but right answers here. So please come serve with us.
I love that. And with that, I think that we can like close out. What are some last things that we should know about anything that's coming up? I don't know, anything. I'm trying to think about a recap question, but I can't. So think about what I just asked you, but also, so we have AmeriCorps alum, right? 1.3 million of us who have served.
Yeah.
We have Peace Corps. Peace Corps seems to be doing a little bit better job of like keeping on with their like alumni. But let's just shift to AmeriCorps really quick.
Sure.
Like, what do you think we could do as a voice? Like, what needs to happen now? And we don't want to go down any political things, but what needs to happen now as um a big voice for AmeriCorps National Service, Peace Corps, and Triple C Vista, all of that, that I mean, I'm just gonna name it. Could be gone. What do we need to do? What's the answer?
Yeah, I can't comment on the politics of any of that, but what I can say is to continue serving, right? Nothing
Yeah,
makes a better case for the need for this than when folks apply and serve successfully. I can talk to folks about the importance of Peace Corps, but when they join me in communities and see the service, that's when you understand the value of it. So please keep, applying to Peace Corps. Please keep applying to AmeriCorps. Again, there are so many different service solutions with different timelines. If you're able to commit, a year, 3 months, 6 months. There's summer associates positions that I think Vista has that are short term. There are the
yeah,
2-year Peace Corps traditional programs. There's so many things you could do. But aside from the career internationally, I think AmeriCorps and Peace Corps also do make you a much more competitive candidate for grad school or
love
for some
that.
more competitive jobs that you might want. So please keep applying. I think we engage in some meaningful service and some life-changing service as well. And I think that's how we'll make our case for the importance of both the Peace Corps and the AmeriCorps.
I love that. And any last words about AmeriCorps or Peace Corps?
I love you both. It's like I don't pick a favorite. I love them both. I think they're both powerful. I'm super proud when I see my Peace Corps members with AmeriCorps Pennsylvania hats, and you're like, that's awesome. Thank you for having served.
Yeah,
And really, it's like family. It's like you understand what that person has been through because you yourself have been through it as well. And I think what I would love to see, before I talked about the silos between AmeriCorps, I'd love to see more of the Peace Corps AmeriCorps silos get torn down. And I
yeah.
saw that recently there was an MOU signed between the two agencies. So I know that's going to continue happening.
Yeah. Actually, that's kind of something that promoted this, like prompted me to be like, hey, maybe we should like put some Peace Corps folks on here. So, Antonio, thank you so much for coming back to the podcast. And if you all want to learn more about his experience as a Teach for America alumni, episode 37, super fun conversation, just like this one. And again, if you've made it this far, you may as well just like it, subscribe it, and share it to somebody. Like, if you're this
Like,
far,
share,
just
subscribe.
just do it.
Let's do it.
Thank you so much. We'll be back next week with another AmeriCorps Connections podcast. And Antonio, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Nikki. Bye.